And welcome back, fellow American patriots and Minutemen standing at the ready to fight anew for the issues that matter today. Your host, Daniel Horowitz, back here at Sierra Podcast on this Thursday to discuss the issues that matter. We've talked a lot about deep policy issues like healthcare, housing this week. I want to get to more political stuff today because obviously, what's the purpose of delving into issues if you can't elect people who will actually change the game? We're now at a point where we've gone backwards in primaries. There is no initiative to try to elect statesmen who will fight rigorously for us, but they're not caught between this false choice of gay or retarded. Meaning, you either have candidates that are, yay, GOP with the pom poms, yay, Trump, regardless of whether he's right or wrong, and they're just party men, or you'll have these reactionary retards that might tap into some of our disquiet, but then they're just running to grow their social media, not to be statesmen, not to build and defend and fight for fortresses of ordered liberty. I want you guys to watch Ron DeSantis' State of the State address, his final 8th year, where he can look back and say, look, not everything is done and some of it was stymied by rhinos, but look at what we've done on immigration, on economic issues, social issues, boom, 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 boom. We don't have anyone who could do that, nor do we really have many candidates on the horizon that actually know what it means to be a conservative, to apply it to the current issues, and build red state fortresses of liberty, utilize their power to protect us from anarcho tyranny, all this stuff. We don't have it. And this is 10, 11 years into Trump's tenure. So today, I want to go back in history to one of our favorite candidates from 2014 that I helped recruit, Chris McDaniel of Mississippi, who fought so valiantly to break through. And that was the year where we were starting to break through in primaries. And then Trump came along and we abolished primaries. And this is where we are today. 10 years later, we forgot what it even means to have a primary. So we have no path to starting a new primary, a new party, reforming primaries, or even running in traditional primaries, but having sane candidates that they're not the establishment, they're not reactionary retards, they're effective, they'll fight for us. Why can't we do what we did in Florida and build on that? And the reason is because we've spent 10 years building social media, distractions, Trump endorsements. And now even the few candidates, by the way, who will, or have a history of this even-keeled conservatism that we all support, that rigorously fights for our prerogatives, not fights for clicks on Twitter. But you know what? Then they run and they're faced with a choice. Well, gee, do I run hard on data centers, against carbon capture land grabs, against marijuana in my state? Well, if I do that, I'll be on the wrong side of Trump and elicit an endorsement against you. And this is how we've gone backwards. This is how we've gone backwards. So I want to go through some of the news of the day through the prism of this thesis, why the GOP is really a dead end for conservatives, both at the primary level, but also at the general election, because it's not like they're effective. They're going to get crushed in the general election. First, again, I just want to plug my Substack at Daniel Horowitz on Substack. You could use your QR code if you're watching with a phone here. So it's in the corner. And if you're not watching, if you're listening, feel free to tune into YouTube and watch at Horowitz Show. Subscribe there as well. Here's the endless feedback loop that we're in today. Okay. So basically, The more radical and destructive Democrats get, the more people are desperate just not to have them. So the more the Republican Party manipulates its voters to bypass primaries and just go to the general election. Just we got to defeat the Democrats. Then they get in there, do the same thing. And here's the deal. They benefit from their subversion because the more ineffective they are, and therefore the more the Democrat policies persist economically, demographically, crime, national security, whatever it is, the more they could turn around next time and say, look, what are you going to do? Huh? You're going to vote for the Democrat? Well, you got to vote for us. And this is the endless feedback loop we're in for years already. And we've forgotten about primaries. We've forgotten about trying to start Freedom Caucus coalitions within the party, eventually break off, reforming primaries and going to conventions, which is a lot easier to win as a conservative. We've forgotten about all of this. So you'll have people that now complain on social media about the rhinos, the globalists, the neocons, but then they don't do anything about it. And their guy, Trump, continues to endorse all these people. And then there's now another layer of this subversion. The more ineffective they get by continuously pursuing this feedback loop of the GOP road to failure, the dead end, well, then the more radicalized people get, but not in a constructive red pill way, but in a black pilled way that's only good for getting clicks on social media, but doesn't get you anything. So then they start adopting foreign views that are foreign to our biblical values, conservative values, because they're like, well, what we're doing is not working. Well, you actually never effectively tried that because you're giving us a false choice between a European retarded right and yay GOP corporatist stuff that Trump has continued. So let me give you some examples of where we are here in the news. Last night, Congress voted on the State Department appropriation bill. And as I've mentioned with the Justice Department bill, all of these bills are essentially funding most of the status quo and not codifying any of the Trump executive orders that we agree with. So there was a vote where Chip Roy offered an amendment to defund the budgets of two judges, Boasberg, this guy that's just overstepping the boundaries of his office. So God forbid should we push back against the entire premise of judicial supremacism. This was a pretty modest proposal. Defund his office. 46 Republicans opposed. You had another amendment by Representative Ben Klein. 81 Republicans voted against defunding the National Endowment of Democracy, which worked to censor and deplatform us, worked with foreign authorities and corporations, big tech, to censor us during COVID. It's like, that's a third of Republicans. And you go down the list of these Republicans, and most of them have gotten Trump endorsements. In fact, one of them, Ashley Hinson from Iowa, she's running for a promotion for the open Senate seat of a rhino retiring Joni Ernst, who's only there because of Trump. You have Jim Carlin, my friend, who challenged Chuck Grassley. Trump endorsed Grassley. Now he's running for the other seat. And this rhino Ashley Hinson is being elevated. So right away, the primary is more important than the general election. You nominate Ashley, you lose the primary, right? You lose the seat right away because even if she does win, you're losing the seat. But someone that uninspiring and that has all this corporatist baggage, honestly, Democrats are going to mow them down. So we can't even cut small ball things. And even executively, Trump first proposed that HHS roll back $2 billion in mental health and substance abuse funding. See, here's the thing. These programs are grifts that mollycoddle drug trafficking. So we have drug traffickers that are released from prison. We're going weak on the law enforcement side of drugs. But then we're supposed to all of a sudden, go statist when it comes to treating it, which is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. They were going to oppose it, but then the special interests yelped about it, so they reversed course. So that's what that. Then you have a bunch of other rhinos that are engaging in AI stock trades. This GOP representative, Rob Bresnan from Pennsylvania. So he is pushing for data centers that are populating and basically colonizing the state. And he bought stock in a major supplier for data centers that boomed 109% as he was advocating their construction. You also have Congresswoman Lisa McClain, a liberal from Michigan, whose husband traded XAI stock right before that company got a Pentagon deal, a new partnership. So the next time you hear that this AI grift, this data center grift is all about competing with China, just understand that these pseudo intellectual arguments are all a facade for a pay for play. What they care about is their personal portfolios, which, by the way, is why we need a ban on stock trades, not just for congressmen, but even more so for executive branch officials who are actually implementing these deals and know exactly the timing of when they're being implemented. Now, Trump supports the ban on Congress, but conveniently opposes it on the executive branch, but we really need it on the executive branch even more than anything. But anyway, getting back to primaries, name me the one inspiring candidate. I mean, Trump has endorsed all these rhinos. The only rhinos he hasn't endorsed are the ones that are directly jousting with him. Okay, directly fighting him, like Cassidy in Louisiana and Cornyn in Texas. But even those, it's not like he's endorsing their opponents. And he's very close with Ken Paxton in Texas, still won't endorse. He'll never endorse against a rhino incumbent. He'll endorse against conservative incumbents, like we saw with Bob Good, the former chairman of the Freedom Caucus. But he'll never do it against a rhino. And folks, you can't drain the swamp if you don't drain the swamp. And in fact, you refill it. Okay? Primaries matter, but this should be the prime season. This is when it is, the beginning of the election year. The primaries are June, July, August. So really, it's these months where you have to build up your candidate against the establishment. But this is what we tend to have. You have a typical, like, Trump establishment candidate. Then you'll have often this TikToker, Groiper guy that's just running to grow his social media. And then we're left without a candidate. Or if we do, he's forced to sort of either pander to the online crowd, the Groiper crowd, pander to Trump, or he's drowned out. And we're left with nothing. We should be growing the Florida model in 20 other red states for governor, for attorney general, for legislature. I don't even care about Congress and Senate anyway. They don't do anything. And instead, we're going backwards in Florida. All the special interest, and Trump endorsed Byron Donalds, knowing exactly what he's going to do. Remember, the state legislature, as good as DeSantis' tenure has been, the state legislature has blocked a lot of his better proposals, and other things he wanted to do are a non-starter with them. Just remember that every one of the people involved in that endorsed Byron Donalds. And now you have 28-year-old former campaign aide Alex Brusewitz, who's supporting Byron Donalds. And in this big Wall Street Journal expose on pay-for-play influencers who get paid to promote different industries on social media. So, he's out there promoting Byron. It turns out he was promoting marijuana. Do you really think Byron Donalds, with support from all those people, is going to do everything, use the whole of state, authority and strategy to block every corner of the state from becoming a marijuana haven. It only lost by a couple points. Had DeSantis not fought it, that would be the law of the land in Florida. They're coming back for another round. You really think this guy's going to fight it? No, they're supporting him precisely because they know he's not. So rather than going forward in other states, we're going backwards in Florida. Now, you do have Jay Collins. He did announce that he's running. And, he was one of the 3 state senators that stood with the governor during that whole rebellion last year. Now he's lieutenant governor, so we'll see what happens there. He's running on leadership is forged under pressure, not in sound bites. But this is what people care about. Either Trump endorsement, establishment money, or sound bites. And by the way, Turning Point Action, Turning Point USA endorsed Byron. Again, my heart goes out to Erica. We're still traumatized by losing Charlie. But, the organization at a political level is just becoming, it's not something new. It's just replacing the RNC. It's the new RNC. It's a conduit for Trump and Vance, and whatever they want, they get. I'm not seeing them, for the most part, maybe outside of Andy Biggs in Arizona, which is their home, fighting for our candidates. Are they supporting Jim Carlin over Ashley Hinson in Iowa? You cannot get a greater contrast between the wings of the parties there. No, because at the top. So there you go. So I don't understand what our plan is. I literally don't understand our plan. It's just ridiculous. And then, folks, here's another thing. It's not even like Republicans are going to win the general election. It's not even like they have a message. Could you imagine if you had my message that echoes a populist tone, but rooted in conservative free market principles on healthcare and housing, corporatism? See, I have none of that baggage. Our candidates would have none of that baggage, but unfortunately, Trump and a lot of these Republicans have tons of this baggage. So it's opened up this avenue for Democrats to win. Democrats are challenging Ohio. They're going to make a run at Florida if Byron wins. They're making a run at Iowa and certainly Alaska. And forget about Georgia and Wisconsin, all these states. So I want to give you a sample of a political ad that Democrats are running. They're not going to run on defund ICE outside of these, core blue areas. They're not going to run on defund the police. They're not going to run on transgenderism. They're actually going to use some of our rhetoric against corruption, corporatism, all this stuff. Now, obviously, they're liars, but I'll tell you this much. If the candidates that were running had our message and record, they wouldn't have a leg to stand on because we'd be outflanking them on that. I want you to listen to Mary Patola. She is a former congresswoman from Alaska. She's running for Senate. You have this guy, Dan Sullivan, the incumbent Republican, full spectrum liberal on every issue under the sun. There's no redeeming qualities to him. So he has all the baggage of the Republican Party, corporatism, no conservatism, nothing, does nothing for us. And take a listen to the type of ad that his Democrat opponent is running on.
Mary Peltola, and I'd like to share why I've made the decision to run for U.S. Senate. I grew up on the Kuskokwim River, salmon fishing with my father. Buzzy and I raised our 7 kids in Alaska and spent long summer days at fish camp. Life is difficult here, and we know that we have to take care of each other. DC people were shocked that I prioritized going back to Alaska in July to help put up fish for our family, but Alaskans understand. Growing up, Alaska was a place of abundance. Now we have scarcity. The salmon, large game, and migratory birds that used to fill our freezers are harder to find. So we buy more groceries with crushing prices. It's not just that politicians in DC don't care that we're paying $17 a gallon for milk in rural Alaska. They don't even believe us. They're more focused on their stock portfolios than our bank accounts. When they actually work together on something, it's usually to help themselves. Our delegation used to stand up to their party and put Alaska first. Ted Stevens and Don Young,
All right. So, I mean, I'm not going to waste your time with the full Democrat ad there, but the point is Alaska first, fish, freedom, cost of living, corruption. Okay. They're shutting us down. They're shutting down. They're almost like anti-regulatory. See, if we had a party with candidates on our message, it would be hard for them to outflank that. Now, Democrats, we all know, are have the same corruption, same problems, same cost of living problems that they cause. But the point is, it's not like what they're saying, or a lot of what they're saying isn't true. They'll lie even if it's not true. But truth does ring true with people. Truth does cut through the grease. And when you listen to a Democrat ad, see, when you listen to a Democrat ad about our candidates, your heart should immediately leap up and say, oh my gosh, that's not true. But be honest, the Democrats might not have the right to run those ads because they have the same glass jaw on these issues, if not worse sometimes. But be honest, some of these accusations, if not all of them, are true of most of these incumbent Republicans, including the president on some issues. So if the GOP's only message is just vote for us because Democrats will impeach Trump, I mean, that's not going to go anywhere. So what they're going to do is, while their foot soldiers at Antifa are creating chaos in the streets, their candidates are going to deftly run on a return to normalcy, affordability, competence, America's legacy, patriotism. That's what they're going to do. So it's not just the fact that if you nominate the status quo Republicans, even if they would win, they're horrible, but they don't have a message to even run and win on. And that's my point today, that the GOP has become nothing but a big dead end for us. It's utterly pathetic. But remember, it didn't have to be this way. And I want to remind you why it didn't have to be this way from someone who was at the forefront of the Tea Party fight in 2014. So, folks, believe it or not, there is something called a primary. I know some of you aren't old enough to remember, but we used to actually have primaries where we tried to get in Republicans who are actually Republicans and they're not, Democrats in all but name only. And it was always very hard because our candidates lacked money and name ID. And the bad guys would use their industry money, knowing that they would enact the opposite policies from what they're campaigning on, but they would use it to campaign on our issues, confuse people. They had all the money and name ID, so they would always win. But gradually, during the era of the Tea Party, 2010, 2012, and then really crystallizing in 2014, we were starting to break through. That was the year we defeated the sitting House Majority Leader in Congress, Eric Cantor in Virginia, with my good friend Dave Bratt. And we came very close. We challenged Mitch McConnell. I helped recruit, by the way, before that was cool. Now everyone's a big hero on Mitch McConnell when he's half dead and he's done with. Although they're not on the ball when it comes to the new Mitch McConnells of our time, some of whom would surprise you. See, everyone's a hero 10 years, dollar day late, dollar short. But anyway, one of those races was really a breakthrough moment. And the reason why I'm bringing on our next guest is because I want those of you who are new to this to understand it didn't have to be this way. I want you to understand that when we complain, oh, why are the Republican Party, the Uniparty, we actually were building a robust movement where we typically had candidates in most key races to varying degrees of viability who were willing to challenge the system. But, conservative media did not join them largely. I did. I helped recruit some of these people. But we were finally gaining traction. But then the rug was pulled out from under us. And then it all became about president, all about social media, all about Trump, Trump's endorsements. And this is why we are today light years backwards from where we were in 2014. So to set the stage for our next guest, Chris McDaniel, I helped encourage him to run in 2014. He was a state senator, starting in 2008. He was a talk radio show host in Mississippi, but he didn't just talk. All right, let me run for office. He was a smart lawyer and decided to run, started a conservative group in the state Senate there because it was just a bunch of big government pay-for-play Republicans, no ideology, nothing going on there. And then he decided to challenge Thad Cochran, who was the U.S. Senator. Now, Thad Cochran was on par with sort of Robert Byrd from West Virginia, Strom Thurmond from South Carolina in terms of his prominence, being there for half a century. Every building was named after him. Now, what he represented is why red states aren't red. They would acculturate the population to welfare, to subsidies, to pork, rather than this sort of innovation that you're seeing in Florida. It was the exact opposite model. And I encouraged him to run, but honestly, I didn't think he'd go anywhere. I really didn't. I mean, it's like saying you're going to run against Trump now. I mean, it's in a primary. It's just not happening. But he did. And with a fraction of his money, Mitch McConnell, everyone came in. Very few people in conservative media, which was a million times better than it is today, supported him. A couple of outside PACs did, like Club for Growth. And I was proud to be a part of that. And he shocked everyone and won the first round. Drew the incumbent into a runoff. It's unheard of for any incumbent statewide leader, but certainly someone of that stature. Now, if you come out ahead against an incumbent in the first round, usually you win the runoff. What they did is the entire party apparatus came in, got Democrats to vote, played the race card against Chris McDaniel, called him a radical extremist. And there were a lot of irregularities there. We could talk about that. That was probably the original election fraud that was in a primary. And Thad Cochran pulled it out by a few points. And it was very tragic. I was listening to Chris's concession, not concession speech from June 24th, 2014 last night. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was tearing up just listening to some of that. I'll play it later this week. I was thinking, oh my gosh, this was 11 and a half years ago. And look at where we are. It was called Strangers in Our Party. And that's where we are today. But then, he always came back, bounced back. Thad Cochran died shortly later. The seat opened up. It was an open seat now. He ran for it. But now Trump was on the scene and endorsed Cindy Hyde-Smith, who was, the appointed senator. Again, no redeeming qualities, full spectrum liberal. She's actually even liberal on social issues, being from Mississippi, which is astounding, in addition to being a fiscal liberal. Everything you hate about the GOP Senate, that's Cindy Hyde-Smith. He ran against her, Trump's endorsement, done. She wins. And then he tried one more time. You know what? And we had him on our show at the time in 2023, more recently. State politics is where it's at. Ran for lieutenant governor against the incumbent Rhino. Put in very hard, got 43%, which is more than you usually get. But the incumbent won. Three times he fought for us. So those of you who say, well, why isn't anyone fighting? Well, there actually were people, but we've abolished primaries. Recently, Chris has put out a Facebook post, and it's important to follow him on Facebook at Chris McDaniel, Senator Chris McDaniel on Facebook. Reform doesn't fail because nobody fights for it. It fails because there aren't enough votes to pass it. So when someone says, why haven't you done anything? I have to stop myself from laughing. I've filed the bills. I've forced the debates. I've taken the arrows, and I've said the things you're not supposed to say out loud. What I can't do is manufacture votes. And here's the part that really stings. The same GOP incumbents who block reform keep getting renominated in Republican primaries year after year. Same names, same records, same results. The people turn around in November, complain that nothing ever changes. It's like planting the same seed and blaming the soil. Even worse, many of these incumbents are protected by endorsements, big names, loud rallies, populist slogans. See, this is something that we didn't have in 2014. Now they've done a better job tapping into reading Twitter, but endorsements follow power, not principle. They always have. So, folks, how have we gotten here? The party being a dead end for us. And is there anything we can do? With us is the star himself, Chris McDaniel, a now former state senator. He's now in private law practice. He's joining us first time with the beard. Hey, Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the Blaze.
Man, it's good to see you again. Thank you for having me. And yes, the beard, unfortunately, is a requirement nowadays because no matter where you go, people want to talk politics. And as much as I love people, I also have to work for a living. And so this helps me hide just a bit, Daniel. So this is not my normal look, as you know, but it helps to hide just a bit.
So, Chris, I am pulling my hair out, as you well know. I mean, we are forced between false flag and fake opposition within a fake opposition. So we had the GOP was the controlled opposition. Now we have this sort of controlled opposition within what used to be called the grassroots.
Yeah.
And we don't have sane, smart, bold, committed conservatives with a heart, a soul, and a brain to articulate and implement. How did we get here? What is your upshot after 3 failed bids to run for statewide office as a state senator against what should be the most conservative state, but all these liberal Republican rhinos?
Well, I tell you, after all those fights, I can tell you this: there's a real disconnect between what people say and what they do. And the people claim the incumbents are the problem, and they claim career politicians are the problem. But ultimately, big money comes into play. Primaries, as you alluded to, have all but been eliminated in our party now because the money apparatus is so large, Daniel. And what happens is if you're a challenger to an incumbent, the spigots of money are turned off all across the state. And so you alluded to the third race against Delbert Hosemann. He outspent us almost 10-1. How do you beat someone being outspent 10-1? The short answer is we hope the people are paying attention. We hope they're watching. They understand who the real conservative in the race is. But unfortunately, as much as people claim they won't change, they fall right back into that same trap time and time and time again. And complicating matters is that when you have a very powerful personality who's very well received by the base, Donald Trump, if he endorses incumbents, it's an automatic win. It's an automatic win. It's as if no one thinks anymore about rhinos versus Republicans or about liberals versus conservatives. It's whatever the party apparatus does, they rally behind. And then those of us that challenge are left out in the pasture. And Daniel, we fought hard. And that Cochran race, especially in 14, if anyone knows the history of that race, they know that we did everything right. And getting into that runoff was really, if you think about it, politically speaking, a miracle. But we didn't just get in the runoff. We beat him the first night. This was Thad Cochran, the most powerful, the most liked politician in the history of Mississippi. And we get into the runoff. And what does our party do? It literally recruits 40,000 Democrats from the Delta and from Hinds County to help him win, and then claim with a straight face that this is real Republicanism or real conservatism. You saw it, we saw it, and it was really a stab in the back. But we shouldn't be surprised, Daniel. Our party has been lost for a long time, and these same incumbents we keep electing time and time again, they have betrayed us for years. And so here we are, you and I, 11 years later, talking about it, scratching our heads. Where did it all go wrong? Ultimately, we have no one to blame but the people themselves if they can't realize right from wrong. And so the post you alluded to, I'm frustrated because what I hear all the time, they say, do something, fight, do something. We have been, Daniel. You have to do something. You have to send us votes so we can pass reform. But no one seems interested in the hard work that takes. And so here we are, stuck behind where we were 11 years ago.
And that's where I want to get to behind, because 2014, if you remember, was an interesting year. We were challenging a bunch of real stalwarts, long, not stalwart in a good way, but long-serving incumbents in the Senate. I wish I would have focused more on governor's races now, because I think that's more important. And we were starting to break through. And I think, you won the first round, and there's questions about the second round with irregularities, but even without that, they had to rely on Democrat voters. So you essentially did the impossible in 2014. But then you ran 2 more times, and I never understood your resilience because I just fall apart when that happens. You did it 3 times, and you didn't come close or nearly as close the other 2 times, 18 and 23. What changed?
Let's talk about that. In 18, first of all, that was a 4-person non-party special election. And so the votes were split a bunch of different ways, as you can imagine. But here's what happened in 18, and it's very uncomfortable to talk about, but it's the truth, so I guess we can say it on the program. The polling showed us exactly where we wanted to be in that race in 18, with only a few weeks remaining. Okay, so keep that in mind. We felt like we were in a perfect position to close that gap and get those undecideds because she was the presumptive incumbent. She was appointed to that position. So we're closing the gap. The numbers are great. And then Donald Trump holds a rally for her in one of my strongest counties up in North Mississippi. And I mean a rally. I'm not talking about 15 people showed up. I'm talking about 12, 15, 16,000 people showed up. And at the rally, even though I'm a Trump supporter, and even though I thought we were aligned, at the rally, he says these things. He says these words. He goes, "A vote for Cindy is a vote for me." And Daniel, at that race was absolutely over. She jumped way ahead in the polls, and my base had been literally ripped away from me.
Yep.
Okay, so that's 18. Now 23.
And by the way, before you get to 23, folks, I want you guys to copy and paste this 500 to 1,000 times the last 5 cycles, governor, Senate, Congress, even a couple of legislative races now. This is seating. He has seated an entire generation of subversive Republicans that when you want to know why we don't have the votes in Congress, that's why. When you want to know why we have one Florida and there's nothing even close to it, that is why. I just gave an example in the Iowa Senate. Now, you have my guy that actually challenged Chuck Grassley, Jim Carlin. He's running again. Trump endorsed Grassley. Now the other seat, he endorsed this Rhino Congresswoman who last night is on the list that everyone's going crazy, who voted to continue funding for the National Endowment of Democracy. And, she's one of the most liberal Republicans. I don't understand how you have all these social media guys, my colleagues in this business that, they're all about clicks. That's all they care about. Yeah, the uniparty. But then, this is like the Super Bowl of primaries now. It's this season, the early part of an election year. Primaries are usually in the summer. So you need in the spring, winter and spring is when you recruit, you have to promote them. You got to get a head start. I can't find help on a single race. I remember where I am about 30 feet from here when I called you, encouraging you to run. Yeah. And I'm like, 11 years later, I can't even get anyone to care about a single one of these races.
It's the strangest thing I've ever seen because, Daniel, we had the establishment on the ropes. I mean to tell you, people forget about that race in 14. He wins by roughly a point and a half. And we beat him at that moment. That's a watershed event, not only for my state, for many states in the South. So we had this establishment literally on the ropes. And you know why? People like you and others, we were talking about movement conservatism, what it really means to be a conservative. There were no elements of liberalism or moderatism or populism in it. It was real, hard school, old school, Reagan, Goldwater conservatism. And it was working. And then the dynamic changed. And all of a sudden, a new wind swept in. And it was as if nobody even cared about these races anymore. It's like everybody focused only on one race, which was the presidency. Nothing wrong with that. It's a big race. But you can't forget all the other of dozens important races that take place down ticket. And we just walked away from those races. And now we rubber stamped it. And it begs the question. I really wanted to drain the swamp. We were trying to drain the swamp. And all these years later, the swamp is stronger than ever. And so, you have to judge things by what they objectively are, not what they should be or what we wish they were or what we're even told. The swamp is a beating beast, and it's stronger than it's ever been. Daniel, I don't know what to tell you, man. tough 11 years, and it seems to be getting worse by the day.
Oh, great. I was going to ask you, what's getting better? Yeah, I mean, I'm looking here. Trump won Mississippi by, let's see, 23 points. That's 10 points greater than his margin of victory in Florida, which until recently was more of a 50-50.
Yeah.
So, like, the question everyone's asking is, you look at DeSantis, and he's the only one fighting big tech and the data centers and the carbon capture and the green grift. He rejected green grift. He's the only one doing street level immigration enforcement at a state level. He wants to abolish property taxes when they, already don't have, income taxes. He single-handedly was the only one to oppose and use a whole of state approach to oppose the abortion takeover and the marijuana takeover. And yet I look around, and not only do we not have anyone doing that now, but you think, okay, 26 is when, see, you guys are a funny state. You have an off-year election.
Yeah.
26 is where you have most red state governorships are up this year.
Yeah.
And I look across the spectrum, you got, first of all, Florida itself is, is going to fall due to Trump endorsement and the marijuana lobby, endorsing their guy. But you got Texas, you got Alabama, you got South Carolina. Okay, you got the Great Plains states, South Dakota and Wyoming and Idaho. We could turn so much of this over.
Yeah.
Trump could endorse conservatives overnight, or even encourage them to run, which he does do now. But more often than not, they're not the right candidates. He just did that to us in Wyoming. And I look at this, Chris, and what I'm finding is our candidates don't even exist anymore. We don't even have the quality of people that have the brain, the soul, and the heart, meaning they don't have baggage, which a lot of them are just a bunch of degenerates that shout slogans maybe some of us agree with online, or they're godless, or they're brainless, or they just don't have anything. They're TikTokers. I mean, this is something we didn't have when you and I met. You didn't have this TikTok nonsense and this social media nonsense, governing politics. And then the few people, I won't mention names, but the few people we do have, then they look around. It's like, okay, well, am I going to run hard on data centers? Am I going to run hard on marijuana? Am I going to run hard on the abortion pill? I can't, because see, Mitch McConnell couldn't do that to us.
Yeah.
He didn't have that degree of clout when he was the party leader.
To your point, a lot of the candidates we have now, and in some parts, big parts of the party, are not tethered. They're not tethered to any enduring or long-term principle. You're an intellectual conservative. I pride myself on our movement, as you know, articulated 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and it finally gave us Reagan. And here now it seems all that's been jettisoned. And I don't know how you bring back those principles, in large part because A, people aren't paying attention. B, there's so much distortion and distraction. And so we can't even have reasonable debates within our party, much less in the mainstream, about why it is we believe what we believe. Now it's all finger pointing and yelling.
But the Democrats, this some sort of distraction, but we don't. It's like a garbage can. Whatever sells. It's like the funniest thing is all last year we talk about how the government's lying about inflation, and now it's the exact same data, and it's like there's no inflation anymore. And we know it's the same government debt servicing that's causing it. We don't know what we believe on healthcare. We don't know what we believe on foreign policy. It's all vibes based, and what do you do with that?
That's just it. It's vibes based. It's click based. It's rage based. And what we've learned online is if we say something really inflammatory, that typically gets a lot of movement. The thing is, though, when you say something inflammatory, oftentimes there's not a lot of thought that's involved in the process. And so here we are now shouting at each other, screaming and calling names at each other, but really not formulating conservative policy and certainly not passing it anywhere I'm familiar with. We don't have the votes, going back to the original point of our discussion. And so where do you go from here? I would hope, and this is something I've tried to do, Daniel. If you've noticed my Facebook page over the last 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, it dawned on me that, you know what, I may go down again swinging, but I'm not going to do it with memes and rage bait. I'm going to actually begin to articulate one more time why it is that I believe what I believe, why it is that I think it's morally better and intellectually better than what the opposition believes. And I'm going to do it in a way that I hope is educational. And you know what? It seems to be resonating. I'm not sure how long that will last because no one wants to read more than 16 words nowadays. But right now it seems to be resonating. So listen, I think education's a big part of that. I think people like you still spreading the traditional message is a part of that, because this rage and this anger, it can't last forever. And we're going to have to measure objectively where we are as a party in 3 or 4 or 5 years. And at that stage, maybe there'll be a resurgence. I certainly hope so, because if there's not, man,
it's an endless feedback loop, because the more the GOP is a failure and the more we keep ignoring primaries and electing these pathetic people, the more people are ticked off because nothing changes. So the more these people explode, it's like this is parallel play. There's the influencer level, and then there's like the elected official level. At the elected official level, it's the same industry doorknobs that there's no soul or heart. There's no pride in your state, pride in the quality of the people, quality of life. This gets into a lot of the issues we talk about now, the big tech stuff. There's nothing. It's just all, you're a conduit for whatever businesses are running Mississippi. That's all you care about. You know, but then you'll have this influencer crowd that will support some of them if they're cool, complain about others that aren't, but won't do anything about it. And it's just so bizarre. It's like they'll promise let me give an example. So we still have anti-white discrimination in law and policy, in many parts of law and policy. We still have criminal justice reform, like this, like namby-pamby week on crime that every legislature is pushing it, by the way. But then at the influencer level, they'll kind of continue to support the people that do that. But then they'll be like, they'll have like really like white nationalist, tribalist sort of stuff. That's like, so the Overton window is a 10 of what we should be doing. They'll meme a 15 and deliver a -5.
That's so good. That's so good. You're exactly right. And yet it seems to be working with a population that's distracted. And right now they're following wherever the clicks are and wherever the outrage is. And when you see elements, for example, of this, they call it the new right. Nazis are not conservatives. They're more, in my mind, attuned to socialists than they are conservatives, because they devalue the individual. And yet somehow these people manage to find a way into our party as well. And that's
mind you, but wait, I didn't mean to cut you off, but as you're talking, I want you guys to know, Wikipedia and everything, you had the moniker as far right your entire career.
It's crazy, right?
Confederate, you were all that stuff.
Right.
Right. And this is you saying that.
It is, because look, far right, I think there's a misnomer there, right? I mean, if you think about the way people perceive politics, it's not like you're taught in school. It's really simple. You either value the individual or you value the collective. You either place the individual at the preeminent point in government and philosophy, or you put the individual under the state or under a philosophy. Both socialism and Nazism share the same fault. They don't value the individual at all. And so they're dangerous philosophies that are more, in my mind, more alike than they are dissimilar. Yet I'm the bad guy. And I never understood how it is I could be such a bad guy when I'm fighting for everybody's personal individual liberty. How's, by definition, how is that racist? By definition, how's that far right? To me, it seems a matter of common sense. But what do we know nowadays? Labels stick, right? When those labels stick, I have to go the rest of my life trying to prove somehow I'm not a far right madman. But what do you do, right?
And this is my problem now is, again, we're caught in this endless feedback loop. We're finding this a little bit in Florida. Just to give a real life example, where you have, you have DeSantis can't run for another term. Of course, we're struck by lightning. Where we have term limits, we don't want them, and where we need them, we don't have them. Like in Texas and Idaho, whatever. So he can't run again. So and it's like he delivers everything you said you wanted, and that's what you were doing back in the day. It's like I look at myself. I wrote a book in 2014. Around that time, stolen sovereignty, among other things, calling for an immigration moratorium and making the case not from this sort of rage weirdness, but the intellectual case. Look, we need to cool off. It's been too much. And this was 12 million legal immigrants ago, and God knows how many illegal immigrants ago. This was before the whole Biden invasion. And now people that were on the other side of me, they suddenly like co-opt that, but in an ineffective, weird way. So now they're like Muslim converts to the cause. So it's like now everything is healthcare, the illegals doing it, housing. No, it's because the government socialist garbage, venture socialist policies. We articulate that. It's like that's a piece of it. You don't want them getting bennies, but stop with the sophistry. You could demagogue even a good issue with sophistry. I called before anyone for an immigration moratorium, but you can't be a single-minded like a buffoon, or like I opposed the Afghanistan stuff and this nation building, refereeing Islamic civil wars before it's cool. You remember that, but right, I'm not all of a sudden a code pink, whatever like that. That's a different thing. Nobody seems to know what the heck they believe.
They don't. Even the politicians don't. And maybe that's why. I used to think, Daniel, if we had this great debate, even if the debate ended in a loss, that at least the debate was had and that ideas would somehow find their way back into the mainstream population. But going back to the earlier point, it's being lost now with distraction and anger, but also among the political base that we elect. Primaries, right? We talked about primaries earlier. Yep. I served 16 years, and I was on the peripheral of it for 4, so 20 years around these people. I know politicians very, very well. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but maybe the people need to hear this. The vast majority, 90% plus, are spineless, gutless pleasers. They have no intention of fighting for you. They have no intention of doing anything but making themselves rich and successful with their buddies and the donor class and the wealthy of this country. They talk bad about the people as a whole. They look down their noses at you because they know ultimately all they have to do is raise enough money by satisfying the donor class and folks like Mitch McConnell. All they have to do is raise enough money to deceive you every 4 or 6 years, and that's what they do. So I can tell you right away, we have a terrible class of people in this country right now, quote unquote, running it. I don't look at them as leaders. I never did. It's a disgusting phrase for folks that are supposed to represent us, not the other way around. But I don't have a lot of faith in them, Daniel. And look, it's the personality type. Who's drawn to power? Who wants power more than anybody in the world? Egoist, folks that are insecure, folks that need hugs. Maybe they weren't hugged enough as children. I don't know. I just know it creates an underclass of people that have no business in office, no business in politics, but they have perfected the art form of reelection, which is take care of leadership, do what you're told, get in line, keep your mouth shut, don't fight for principles. Lord knows that's not going to work. Just fool the people, deceive the people, and that's where we are.
So going forward, how do we fix this? And do you believe, this matters. I have this debate with my colleague, Steve Dace, a lot.
Yeah.
Is the ultimate problem, it's always going to be a little bit of both, but where would you put more of the blame? Is it ultimately the ignorance of the people, or is it the subversion of the self-appointed conservative voices?
It's certainly a combination of the both. If I had to pick one, I think it begins with the subversion. But ultimately, goodness, Daniel, you think folks would wake up after so many years? And, ultimately, if the people want to remain asleep, then they have to accept blame for this at the end. And right now, they're still asleep. Who votes? We have low voter turnout in Mississippi. Presidential races get all the attention. No one seems to care about state legislative races or even for congressional seats. And so if the people of a free country can't stay in the fight, if they're not diligent and they're not willing to fight for their belief system, then ultimately, I guess we have to blame the people. And I hate to say that because I want to be a Reagan optimist and I want to talk about the shining city on the hill. But man, the city's crumbling and no one seems to care because we're too busy meme screaming at each other. And so I don't want to be a pessimist, Daniel. It's not my nature. But goodness gracious, somebody's got to wake the people up. And so far, it's not working.
No, and folks, I want you to understand, like, it didn't have to be this way. I'm sick of all these people that came here 3 minutes ago and like, yeah, things used to be Mitch McConnell. Well, actually, no, we were fighting him before it was cool when no one else was. And in fact, the people you're supporting are the new Mitch McConnells. And that's the thing, because what do we mean by Mitch McConnell? Is Ron DeSantis more conservative than anyone else? I mean, maybe. The big difference is he governs ideologically for the common good for the whole of the people. He doesn't care about special interests. This special interest thing is the central point that ties. He literally slays every special interest. He was willing to do it on the second largest employer in the state. That to me is the difference. So you're either an industry guy or you're for the people, but now we have this another layer. So back to Florida, you have this guy Trump endorsed that just, everyone knows the legislature that's been blocking DeSantis is endorsing him. So they know what they're going to get from him. The industries know what they're going to get. He raised $40 million. And then you have, so Jay Collins is a Green Beret trying to gain traction, but he doesn't rage bait. And then you have this guy that raised $960 actually, but he gets on Tucker, says I'm going to tax only fans and, this sort of thing. And that's a microcosm of what I'm seeing, why we're not getting like Freedom Caucus types that, again, that are not just intellectually grounded, but they'll actually implement a lot more than these TikTokers who will never get elected anyway.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice? And do you think one of the answers is to change either state or party law to go to conventions to select nominees instead of popular primaries?
Interesting. I know that some states have experimented with that in primaries, or at least I've read about the possibility of that occurring. That's a great question. In Mississippi, for example, one of the problems we've had, as you know, is that we don't have close primaries. And so Democrats, recognizing that a moderate Republican in a red state is better than a conservative Republican in a red state, they were able to cross over and influence Republican elections. Now, in my mind, that would be a good first step for our state, right? Close the primary, and that would, I would think, make the primary electorate more conservative, certainly, and probably more movement-centered than what we presently have, which is just a bunch of people rushing to the R primary because the Democrats aren't competitive in their own primaries, right? So in my mind, that would be a good first step. Short answer is I want to see any reform we have to take to A, wake people up, and B, win primaries and replace some of these career politicians. And you asked earlier about a Freedom Caucus. Those are great concepts, but they lack the numbers to really effectuate change. Now, sometimes in our Congress, when you have a really close margin, you saw the Freedom Caucus had some ability to negotiate. But in our state, we have 8 members? And there's only so much we can get done with 8 or 9 members. So people have to send conservatives to these positions, real principal conservatives that will band together and then seek to influence the body as a whole. We don't have that right now. And so you're alluding to a situation where conservatives would be more likely to elect conservatives. If that's the case, I'm in, count me in. But again, not trying to be a pessimist, I just don't see enough people awake in this era to effectuate real change.
They're misdirected. The primaries are more important than the general. Like I tell people, the difference between DeSantis or Chip Roy and a generic Republican is greater than the gulf between a generic Republican and Democrat.
It's huge. And I don't know why folks can't see that. We're losing the country because we're losing the primaries. It's just that simple. You start winning those primaries, you'll see a change in our party because these weak, spineless folks will hear the people. They'll see the results of their buddies losing in primaries, and you'll be surprised how quickly they'll become conservative. They're like windsocks at an airport, whichever way the wind blows. But we have to have the wind blow our direction first, right? And so if we ever started winning primaries, you'd see the party shift back to the right. But right now, they have a monopoly on winning primaries because they have the money.
And isn't it true that you need to grow high human capital? There's no way of getting around that. This is my observation from Europe I've had for years with the European right, that what happens is if you have a discombobulated right, they never get anywhere. So they cede the ground to the technocrats So while if you would poll in Europe, do you want Islam to take over? Do you like what's going on with the refugee? No, consistent people don't want it. But the same people win because, the right was just not with it. I mean, they're just brainless, mindless in a lot of these places. I think we've now surpassed Europe with this mindlessness. So what happens is it's not like you're going to get neo-Nazis in office. You're just going to cede the ground to these guys, and you'll have the typical modern, this generation's version of Mitch McConnell. So they're more artful about putting on the Trump hat, the red hat, and saying this stuff, but they're nothing but a conduit for industries. They block all of our ideas in the red state legislatures. This is continuing. I mean, I don't know how we get around that.
I don't either. And that's why, I sound like a pessimist all the time, like somehow I'm defeated. I'm not defeated. I'm excited about the future. But at the same time, we've not seen any hard evidence to demonstrate that a turn is about to take place. It looks like we're stuck in a rut. And the question is, how do you find yourself out of that rut? And right now, we don't have an answer outside of winning primaries. And to your point, lowest common denominator sometimes enters the fray, whether that's Nazism or radical socialism on the other side of the equation. And they enter the fray and they change the dynamic in so many bad ways for us because it rubs off on the definition of conservatism, of being what a real conservative is supposed to be. And Daniel, I'm not sure we can define that right now. I'm not sure the people can define it. I think you can define it. I think I probably can come close to defining it. The people can't define it. They're lost. They're lost philosophically. And that's a shame. But we have a role now to play, and that's to hopefully bring them back to the conservative traditions that made this country great in the first place. Can we get there? I don't know. I mean, I never thought I would see the day where people just tuned out reason and tuned out rationale and exchanged it for just anger and rage. And maybe some of that rage is justified. I get mad too, but not at the expense of my intellect.
It's not constructive. It's not like anger and rage that you wake up and you find half the legislature is replaced. No, to the point. The point is, it's almost the way I say is like we had this army that we're gaining traction in 2014, and then a couple years later, someone came in the middle of the night and injected all of our troops with heroin. they're just like dancing around doing whatever while meanwhile the same stuff continues. It's not like, that's what I'm saying. It's not even like we're replacing these guys, albeit with flawed people. It's just the same thing. It just, now you just have a little bit more of a tarnished vibe to the middle of the road voters that otherwise maybe could be brought into what we believe, and it's just so destructive. We're about out of time here, but Chris, could you look? You've done this 3 times. Mississippi's governorship is up, not this year, but you have it next year, which is not far away. Would you ever consider running again?
Don't know. I have to work through that in my head. It's I practice law for a living, and I really enjoy my law practice, and God has blessed me there, and I've had more time with my sons over the last couple of years, and that's another huge blessing. I still have one that's in junior high, and it might be that I let him get a little older first before I run again. But I also always tell people I never close the door because, I'm here to fight. Some people are just born to fight. That's what I was born to do. And I believe really strongly in conservatism, the way you articulate it. And I'm going to fight for those principles until I have no breath left in this body. And if that means running for governor, that might be the case. If it means waiting 5 years, that might be the case. But I'm never going to stop. I don't have it in me. And so when the smoke clears many years from now, I'm going to be able to say that, I stood my ground. I fought for my principles. And we may have got pushed off the field of battle, but not because there wasn't a fight. And so I think that's very important.
We don't have too many people left that are tethered, like you said, grounded, hardcore, don't care about PC. We're going to push through the issues, but for the sake of the issues, not for any other extraneous motivation. That is a very, very small club. And I'd really hope you'd consider, if some of these circumstances change and would provide that opportunity, I know I would have given up after the first one, but you kept it going. I just think it's important for people to have this full history. There's a lot of new people that think, the world began like 2016, and they don't understand that there was a whole history behind this. And we were actually trying to change the party. And I think the current orientation of the Republican Party from governor, Senate down on down is a testament to the failure of whatever that was. You could debate who to blame,
Yeah.
but we failed to fundamentally alter the party one iota. And we could make the argument that it's actually gotten more complicated for people like us to rise to the top and actually change things. I guess the Facebook is where people could find you.
Absolutely. Senator Chris McDaniel, they're on Facebook. And as I said earlier, Daniel, I've started pushing away from the rage memes and the mean screaming, and I'm starting to write more about the ideas that you and I believe in. And hopefully there's a message for that out there. Hopefully people begin to read again and to think again. And hopefully, God willing, in a few years, we see the fruits of our labor finally take off. But man, I'm a huge fan of yours. You keep doing what you're doing. You're awesome. You're a breath of fresh air. I wish we had 1,000 of you up there, but I'm afraid there's only 1 or 2. So,
well, I think the algorithmic brothel makes sure that no one's invited in, so we're sort of censored. So thank you, Chris, for joining us. God bless you. Thank you for fighting. And folks, yeah, that's exactly why I need you guys to subscribe at Horowitz Show on YouTube. So, because you're not going to see it if you don't. I can guarantee you that. You're not going to find me on Twitter anymore, even though I'm there because I'm shadow banned. So make sure to subscribe to the Substack, Daniel Horowitz Substack. You could go and touch the QR code right here in the top left corner. Folks, till tomorrow, Micah 6:8. God bless you all, and thank you for listening.